Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you're watching, unless you're watching live. Thanks for being here. We are streaming again tonight on this slightly chilly September 6th. And tonight's live stream is going to be a lot shorter than we've usually done, just as long as it's going to take to install Windows 3.0 Revision B, which was the latest version of Windows 3 that was released. And since we haven't recompressed the drive in the computer with our ad store superstore that we unboxed, and unwrapped yesterday and looked at, it is installed, but we haven't compressed the drive yet. I invite you to check out the live stream for September 5th, 2022, if you want to check that out. So we're going to start Disk 1, Windows 3.0, upgrade our Windows 2.11 for 286. And hopefully do not have any problem with these discs that I made the images earlier. So some useless trivia. This type of Windows setup, which was two parts. You had the text-based portion of setup right here, and then you had a graphics portion of setup that comes later. Just going to go through this, read it, take a moment. That's cool that it actually gives you the option and says, hey, if you want to keep your old version of Windows intact, enter a new path name. But you know what? Just for giggles, because the drive is going to get formatted again in the future anyway, let's upgrade it. Well, we're sure. So let me say MS-DOS or PC-DOS, of course. VGA, Microsoft or PS2, yes. Just for giggles, gonna look down at the network. We're not ready for that quite yet. When we do Windows 3.11 for workgroups, we'll get there. Now, the first computer that I had that was capable of running a high resolution for the time, which was VGA 640 by 480, was an NEC PowerMate 286. And Windows 3.0 was the version of Windows that we installed on it. Microsoft used to actually sell upgrade kits that was like combo packs of DOS 5 with Windows 3.1. So just to kind of demonstrate how out of sync we are, this is still a DOS 3.3 machine, and here we are installing Windows 3.0, and we're going to go all the way up to 3.11 for work groups, and it's still going to be DOS 3.3. Then I'm going to try to back the system up to another machine. Excuse me, and format it and try to install OS2 version 1.3 extended if we are successful in doing the disk image conversion, because the only flavor of OS2 that we can find in the usual places online is the Microsoft branded version standard edition 1.2, which that would work for what we want to try on the channel. See if we can get it to recognize all the cool expansion cards that we have in here. But being somewhat of a purist, want to have nothing but real IBM stuff installed. So to get back to what I was talking about, this is the graphical component of setup, and it didn't load mouse drivers. Fine. We'll have to use the keyboard. This type of setup was used all the way from Windows 3 up to Windows Vista. And even the NT... I was going to say... I don't know if Windows NT setup was a little bit different than this, but for the non-Windows NT type setups, Windows 3 was this, 3.1 and its subflavors. Windows 95 had the text-based component of setup and then graphics. Then Windows 2000... Windows XP had a text-based component and then the graphics, and then when we went to Vista, it was all graphics all the way. Even to this day, like Windows 10, there is no text-based component of setup. Even the setup is all GUI. Now, we often joke on the channel, some of the viewers talk about, could you imagine installing any one of the more modern versions of Windows off of a floppy disk, whether it's, 3.5, 5.25. And now I don't even think you could do that because there's very few files that by itself would fit onto a single floppy. But Microsoft actually did have, there was a special version of Windows 98 that you could buy that was on a very obscene number of floppy disks. It was something like 60 or so. High density, formatted with Microsoft special format to get more than 1.44 megs onto a disk. If I could find that, that would be something interesting to try. See exactly how long it would take to install Windows 98, either first or second edition, off a floppy. And speaking of installing things, and I'm not sure yet, we'll see, about what would happen. One of the Windows 95 betas. Now, Windows 95, it needs a 386 SX minimum. Won't install on anything else. But I know, like some of Microsoft's other betas, like for example, when Microsoft's Windows NT could be installed on different platforms. You could install it on Alpha CPU systems. You can install it on PowerPC systems. No, not Macintosh. Just like PCs that use the PowerPC processor. IBM actually made some of those. Well, on Windows 2000, up to Beta 3, Microsoft was still compiling the Windows 2000 bits for those other architectures, and some other friends of mine says, boy, if we could get an old DEC digital equipment Alpha computer and install Windows 2000 Beta 3 with those bits, and then install some of the other upper-end Microsoft software that you could get specifically for Alpha, put it in a kind of production environment for yourself and see how long it would take to get hacked, because Alpha is an entirely different architecture than x86. The other thing I find interesting is if you go, since we've talked about OS2, we're going to do finally get the OS2 with the GUI on here, hopefully, is that if you look at pictures of that, the GUI for that looks somewhat more refined than Windows 3.0, 3.1, but was available so much earlier. And you kind of wonder, like, it was, OS2 version 1 in that series was co-developed by Microsoft and IBM, and IBM didn't start developing it solely by itself until 2.0. Why didn't Microsoft use that refined user interface and its versions of Windows unless there was something with the license agreement preventing it from doing so? Quick segue while it's, while we're finishing up the install. One of the products that we use on the channel is SpinRite from Gibson Research Corporation. And regardless of what you think about that piece of software, I'd like to think you also have to give Steve Gibson credit for the way in which he codes his software. He still codes in machine language, assembly language, which is about as tight to the metal as you can get. Makes it very fast, very efficient, very lightweight. All the functionality in SpinRite fits in a 200 kilobyte executable. And I often wondered, if Steve were to write an operating system, we probably still could be using 286s to get on the internet today. Just speculation. I kind of like that color scheme that it pulls in from Windows 2.1. Oh, I'm going to make us go back a disc. Oh, my. Let's see what kind of modifications it's going to make. I don't like the fact it's going to put, the... Yeah, we'll have to go through and we can change that after the fact. And let's see, let's config sys. Ugh. It's actually going to take the... I don't like the fact it's going to take a whole bunch of that stuff out of there. And I'm like, no, thank you. We're not going to be doing that. Cancel. I'll make modifications later. Sure. Well, I don't like that. In Windows 2.0, we installed a couple of printers. I thought maybe it would copy them over, but it didn't do that. I'm only interested in... Okay. The graphics printer, even though it's not here, I don't have it at this location. And I'm going to put the Pro Printer X24 in there. And oh, look at that. The X24E, which is the printer we got from Computer Reset. We'll install that. Okay. It's interesting how it says Microsoft Basic on DOS 3.3. It was still IBM Basic. I'm not going to set any of those up. Won't bore you with that. Let's restart Windows. See what happens. Now, Windows 3.0 was the last version of Windows to have the real mode, which would let it run on 8088 or 8086. And still don't have mouse driver. Windows 2.11/286 had the mouse driver built in. Oh. So I guess it is installed. Maybe it's not the right version, but it's working, but you can't see the pointer. So I guess that's a bug, I suppose. All right, Microsoft. Free memory, small frame EMS, 0 and EMS. Although look at that, 664K and expanded. Okay, that's pretty cool. Fortunately, in real mode, you don't have access to extended memory. Wonder if we can force it without restarting the machine. We're going to type win/s. Oh, invalid HiMem. Yep. Okay. Well, it's a newer version of HiMem. That's all right. We'll deal with that another time. So let's see. In main, you've got first version of Windows that came with the file manager. A much better control panel. Then you've got, the print manager, which is the print queue, the clipboard, Windows setup, and DOS prompt, which is the command prompt. And because this is a 286, we can't set up a swap file. That only happens on 386s. Let's check out the accessories. Right. Much better version of Paint. If you were around back then, you remember how much time you wasted in this thing. Although, oh, I know why it's sucking wind, because we're running in real mode. The terminal, not much we can do here until we get a lab set up with multiple machines in it. We could do like a null modem cable in between two of them. Notepad. Very basic text editor. This was the first version of Windows this was included in. Macro recorder, which I never used, but back then when you're a teenager, you're not thinking about what could you use a macro recorder for Windows for. Now all sorts of uses, I think. Card file, which continues from the earliest days of Windows. The calendar also continues from the earliest days of Windows. Discontinued in Windows 95. Like, you didn't have this. You needed to buy like a third-party program or Microsoft Office in order to get it. The clock, which you could finally set it to digital. Although I kind of wonder. I don't know, not enough memory or not enough horsepower to keep the clock going. And then the PIF editor for your MS-DOS programs. And then the last window, 2 games now, Solitaire and Reversi. Reversi will, if you're not upgrading from a previous version of Windows to Windows 3.1, you end up losing Reversi. It includes Minesweeper. And sometimes I wonder if they lost the licensing for Reversi, wherever they were getting that from. So, thank you for watching. If you like this sort of content, consider joining my other Patreon subscribers and contributing to the channel. The money is only used for getting software, hardware for the Richard Byron library for IBM systems preservation. We've got lots of stuff in there. Too much stuff. In fact, going to have to find a much larger location to move this to. But for the meantime, this location that we're shooting these videos is where it is. And as always, thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next video.